Hello, hello! After showing some of the higher tier Russian cruisers, people have been requesting me to at least look over one of the lower tier ones. So I decided to pick the T3 one, the Bogatyr. And it's honestly turned out to be quite a fun ship. It's honestly very much like the St. Louis, except what I would call a turbo version, or a light version might also work. It has two more guns than the St. Louis, and slightly faster, slightly better range, slightly slimmer profile. But on the other hand, it has nowhere near the HP pool. The St. Louis has almost 30k HP, this one only has 23k. And the citadel on this ship is not as nicely protected as the St. Louis one, which is pretty much nigh impossible to hit by most of the ships in the same tier. So it's a squishier, but in some ways better, but a significantly squishier version of the St. Louis. But you can see the way it looks, it reminds you very much of the St. Louis itself, with all the guns and the smokestacks, and very similar type of ship in general. But for all the advantages it gains over the St. Louis, it loses out significantly on the tankiness, on the survivability that the St. Louis has. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you wouldn't want an entirely identical ship either, and ultimately I think the ship is quite good, like really good. It's almost more fun to play than the St. Louis. In a straight, I don't really know. Oh god, you can tell it's T3. Umikaze randomly throwing torps, Dursky throwing torps. Dursky has what, 3 kilometer torps, and he just randomly spamming his torps down towards our friendly Dursky. Is he going to get team killed? Luckily no. Anyway, overall, the small advantage this has is that it has 2 additional guns more than the St. Louis. It has 1 kilometer more range. I think the St. Louis is like 10.5. This one sits at 11.5. And I'm not certain about the reload. I think this probably has about similar than the St. Louis. Wouldn't be surprised if it was very similar to the St. Louis. The slight increase in speed and concealment, I think it has like 1 knot more speed and maybe 500 meters better concealment. So ultimately rather small differences. And a significantly slimmer profile, as I mentioned. It's not as thick as the St. Louis, but in return, of course, the huge HP loss. I mean, 23 to 29k is a significant difference. There's no doubt about it. But the ship itself has been quite strong. I've even had success even when I've been thrown against T5 matchmaking in the ship, because one of the great strengths of this ship, much like the St. Louis, is the HE spam and the basically fire spamming. Getting as much HE damage and fires going on targets as possible. And much like the St. Louis, this is effective against all tiers. Of course, your fire chance drops dependent on how high of a tier of ship you're shooting, but still, it's something that works against everything, meaning this one actually does fairly well when you get it matched up against higher tiers. It doesn't struggle as much as some other low tier cruisers might. Now, first target I'm picking Dresden. The shell speed is decent. I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking. It's definitely not something you can call railguns, as you see how lazy these arcs are. But it's not the end of the world either, and it's pretty common for these low tier ships that basically they have a significant arc, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And in overall, it helps you get used to the T4 and the T5, which both have also very lazy arcs. It's not until the T6 that you suddenly get access to basically the railguns that the Russian cruiser line later on becomes quite famous for. T6, T7, T8, T9, T10, they all have railguns. Until then though, very lazy arcs. But the small increase in range is nice, and you can actually use these arcs quite well in these lower tier maps, as I'm showing here, basically just hiding behind the islands and just spamming HE on everything you see, and getting fires started on battleships, tanker cruisers, whatever you might pick. Oh, excuse me. I need to get some more sleep. Anyway, switching straight away from the the South Carolina to the St. Louis. Basically, this is very much, it plays very similarly to the St. Louis. I mean, I think a lot of players by now have already experienced the St. Louis, so playing the ship probably won't come as, or playing the ship will probably feel quite comfortable for most of them. You can't be quite as aggressive as you can in the St. Louis simply because of the lack of HP, and if you actually happen to bump into someone who is smart enough to use AP at these low tiers, then you can take a significant amount of damage if you go broadside, because it doesn't have the similar citadel protections. Getting some incapacitations, but overall, this game seems fairly even. Well, it seemed fairly even until we suddenly lost someone there. Gonna start the fire chance on these shells is actually quite decent. It's 9%. And considering, if you look at the bottom left, you can see just how many damn guns you got on this ship. So you actually end up being quite a good fire starter. Like a full broadside, you land a significant amount of shells. So you can end up getting fairly consistent fires going. Of course, now that I mention it, I probably won't get any fires. But, oh, never mind. Actually proved my point there. You can get a lot of fires going simply because you have so many shells that you're spamming. But the shells themselves, like one by one, they don't do that much damage. You can see the HE damage itself is quite pitiful. And it's kind of the same with the AP damage. I've tried using the AP, I've tried going for the citadel broadsides, but you really have to be close to a cruiser to make use of that AP, because overall the HE just seems far more consistent and far more reliable, mostly because of course of the fire chance as well. But yeah, I wasn't impressed with the AP at all. The AP does do a significant amount more damage, like on the stats, but in actual usage the AP hasn't been nearly as strong as I was hoping or expecting, especially considering Russian cruisers in general, or well, these Russian railguns are kind of famous for their AP, I guess, like railgun citadels and so forth, but it hasn't been, on these low tiers it doesn't seem to apply at all. Even the T4 ship seems much stronger as just spamming HE than spamming AP. Something interesting on the ship is actually the upgrades. You can actually choose between two different gun upgrades. The default ship comes with 152mm guns, but you can upgrade those guns to 130mm. So you're upgrading to a smaller caliber. Now, reading the ship description, it says that the ship, after it was launched, they later on upgraded to 150mm guns, giving it longer range and higher rate of fire. Well, that's what it says in the description, but looking at the actual upgrade stats, the actual modules, upgrading doesn't give you any of that. You don't get rate of fire, and you don't get range. In fact, the only thing you get is slightly faster turret traverse. So, I'm actually not so certain if getting the gun upgrade on the ship is worth it, because the 152mm guns deal more damage, and I think they had a higher rate of fire as well. So, what's the point of getting the upgrade? I just don't see it. Overall, I thought the 152mm guns also had better AP. So you gain 1% fire chance by going to these 130mm guns I'm using now, but I'm not really certain if it's worth it spending the XP, spending the money to get to upgrade 152 to 130, because you're basically spending a lot of stuff to get less damage and smaller caliber, and it didn't seem worth it to me. So whether or not that upgrade is, if that upgrades keeps the same iteration that it has now, basically where it's almost useless, or more feels like a waste of both XP and credits, then I have a hard time recommending it at all. It would make sense if they would change it to the actual release, that it would actually have some impact, but right now it seems like one of the most useless module upgrades in the game. In fact, it seems like a negative module upgrade, because the trade-off of slightly faster turret traverse just doesn't seem to be worth everything you're giving up to get it. So yeah, pretty strange honestly, or very strange actually. Here you can see the HE spam in progress, breaking stuff, getting fires going. pretty strong against these lower tier cruisers, but then again, this is very much the same as the St. Louis does, because the St. Louis is overall considered an overpowered ship, for a good reason, really. Compared, the other cruisers at the same tier don't really compare, until this one, which is actually gives a pretty damn good fight to the St. Louis, provided you play it correctly, of course. Engine broken, but yeah, if it comes down to the question, is this ship, is the Bogatyr overpowered? Then no, I don't really think so. I mean, if the St. Louis wasn't in the game, then I might feel this is a bit maybe too strong. But because the St. Louis is basically a tankier, beefier version of this ship, I have a hard time calling it overpowered, because it's just another St. Louis, really. It's a light turbo version of the St. Louis. So, yeah, hard time calling it overpowered. No one should be dead. Switching, gonna kill the South Carolina behind the St. Louis. Here we actually see one of the advantages the ship has over the St. Louis now. If you were to charge in straight up towards the St. Louis, then you would probably lose quite significantly, actually, because his HP advantage and his tankiness would basically take you out. But thanks to your small speed advantage and small range advantage, you're actually able to kite St. Louis to death quite comfortably. So as you can see here, I'm basically just sailing away, and I'm focusing on the South Carolina first before I start dealing with the St. Louis, because this guy has such low HP, this Profer 0. Come on, is he gonna die? Having no luck with fires, but I am slowly tickling him to death, it seems. Another South Carolina. There we go, finally killed it. Now I switch to the St. Louis, and now, as you can see, I'm trying to angle away to make myself as hard to hit as possible. Nice, get a fairly early fire. Always good when you get it early, especially if they repair. Prof 0, oh, that's the South Carolina I killed. He's not very happy about being killed. Hey, caps lock, fuck you. Gotta love the low tire anger. Anyway, melting the St. Louis next, kiting him away, as I mentioned earlier. Just kiting. This is much like Cleveland versus Cleveland battles. The guy who sails away always has the advantage, because your shells have a shorter travel time, because basically the enemy is sailing towards you, so your shells have a shorter time to travel. And I'm using this to my advantage with my speed boost and everything to basically make him miss as many shells as possible. Nice, got a second fire on him, and got a high caliber, that's always nice. He's pretty much dead now, so I'm just trying to avoid as much of his shells as possible. My 2 fires will kill him, he can't repair it. So just trying to dodge as many of his shells as possible. Nice. Kraken, that's always nice. But then again, against these low tiers, it's, well, this is seal clubbing, that's what it is. I mean, you can't really twist it any other way. This is straight up seal clubbing, since I obviously have a lot more experience than most of these players. But it does show the potential of the ship. It is by no means a weak ship, and overall, quite a fun ship. What do they have left? They have that Dersky and another cruiser. Undetected, so the cruiser is probably nearby. Nice, broke his engine, just in time for him to eat some torps. Okay, I'll take it. I'm still detected, so it's pretty obvious that the cruiser is somewhere down here. Otherwise I wouldn't be detected just for firing. So I'm just waiting to see for him to pop up here. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's another St. Louis. Fair enough. Same tactic again, turning away, using my using the small advantages I have to my advantage against him. Nice, once again, got an early fire going, which is very important. And I'm kiting away from him. Trying to get as far away from him as possible. Got a Confederate as well, that's always nice. Oh shit, I just realized I have my TV on. Huh. I'm gonna have to listen to this commentary afterwards. Hopefully it didn't bleed too much background noise into this. Might be some... It's actually a really stupid comedy I'm watching in the background, so that might be bleeding into. But whatever, I'm using the advantages as I mentioned earlier. Kiting away, making it hard for him to hit me, angling my ship, just basically using both the arcs and the slight speed advantage to my advantage. He's using AP, which not really that smart when I'm so low, because the problem with AP in general is that it's unreliable when firing against an angled target. So, whereas HE is reliable but lower DPM, and now I gotta fire, so he's guaranteed dead. Probably die before these shells even land. Very nice. Secure the kill. Exactly what I wanted. And I actually ended up getting 6 kills. Okay, what happened now? My screen just straight up froze. Hello? World of Warships? What the hell is going on? It just froze? What? Guess I'll have to click this way into 90k damage for T3, always nice. 6 kills. Quite well, of course, there's seal clubbing, so seal clubbing stats. But overall, this ship seems to be a very nice ship, and so far it looks like leveling this Russian line is going to be quite fun, because I haven't really bumped into any horrible turrets yet.